So, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session. My name is Elizabeth Osenova. I'm coming from Bulgaria, and we have very packed agenda. So, some simple housekeeping rules. There will be 4 presentations in total, 20 minutes for each presentation, 15 minutes for exposition, and then 5 minutes for questions and answers. I will give you a sign when there will be 5 minutes left and 2 minutes left. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker today, who is Artur Ceolin from Brazil. He will talk about how can we define and characterize entrepreneurship, and he is coming from Universidad Rei Juan Carlos. So, Artur, please.
Firstly, I would like to quote that it's a huge pleasure to be here presenting my paper. My work is part of my PhD thesis and is entitled, How Can We Define and Characterize Entrepreneurship? To understand better the subject, I must show you the current research about it. And in this sense, entrepreneurship has different approaches, even in the Austrian school. And among the Austrian approaches, we can find the Kirchnerian alertness, the judgmental approach, and the production organization perspective. More than that, the present researchers focus on the study of the creation of new ventures as the manifestation of entrepreneurship. But we must comprehend that the relevance of another kind of creation that happens inside organizations called intrapreneurship. And so, the present work attempts to analyze if a conciliation among alertness, judgment, and production organization approaches is the best way to define the nature of the entrepreneurial action using a theoretical methodology. And what is entrepreneurship? This concept has different uses. One more strict that indicates entrepreneurship as directly linked with the creation of new businesses, and you are more general, including not only the creation of new businesses, but also innovative activities related to products or processes. The general use seems more favorable, since entrepreneurship of man goes beyond the mere business-related activity. As quoted by Huerta de Soto, in a broader sense, every human action is entrepreneurial. And for the development of an entrepreneurial environment, collaborators must be encouraged and motivated to make innovative decisions, finding support for their actions. With no support, resources, and enough time to create, they are constrained due to the lack of resources. Without an organizational arrangement that allows them to be creative and innovative, it's impossible to create and innovate. Now that I presented the entrepreneurial definition, I will talk about the 3 different Austrian approaches already quoted, starting from the Kirchnerian alertness. Kirchner conceptualized alertness as an abstract type of knowledge. Kirchner conceptualized alertness as an abstract type of knowledge through which we should credit the discovery and exploitation of opportunities. The exercise of alertness requires an ability and skill to perceive opportunities and the freedom to pursue them, being possible to exercise entrepreneurship without capital ownership. Furthermore, Kirchner has emphasized the exercise of alertness and the entrepreneur's activity as coordinating activities. Although very innovative for its time, the Kirchnerian approach was not left intact, particularly concerning the role of the entrepreneur on it. For Hofbauer, for example, the Kirchnerian entrepreneur is nothing but an ideal type that does not venture, but only perceive new opportunities. And Kirchner later clarified the misunderstandings about his concepts. The key purpose he means for the discovery concept was linked to creativity, that is discover ex novo opportunities, and for that matter, discovery gains the meaning of creation. In the judgmental approach, the feature that defines man's entrepreneurial action is the exercise of judgmental decisions under uncertainty. Influenced by Rothbard's and Salerno's criticisms of Kirchner, the judgmental approach emphasizes capital ownership and the ultimate decision on the use of resources, providing a direct connection between this and man's entrepreneurial action. There is something to be considered. The fact that entrepreneurs take a responsibility for the ultimate judgmental decisions on investments does not mean that they are the only ones responsible for them. Foss, and Clay separate these two types of judgment. The one made by entrepreneurs, called original judgment, and the other made by employees, called derived judgment. And there's a third mentioned approach in the Austrian school, the perspective of entrepreneurship as the production organization. To comprehend the production organization, it's necessary to know that it's necessary to understand the heterogeneous nature of capital. Capital goods are heterogeneous not only by their physical features, but also by their roles in different production plants. The Austrians, led by Mises, have already focused their arguments on the idea that one of the central roles of the entrepreneur is choosing between different arrangements of factors in the production of goods. Rothbard states that an entrepreneur who generates profit is the one who allocates resource, hence organizes the production, where those were undervalued according to desire of the customers. Each of these three approaches presented tries to define entrepreneurship and how it develops. Each approach has its advantages and disadvantages in explaining entrepreneurship. Without alertness, it's impossible to explain the entrepreneurship of man and its judgment under uncertainty. In other words, man would not have a reason to judge anything if he was not perceptive to enjoy, discover, or create new opportunities. Likewise, being alert is not enough. After discovering, imagining, projecting, and creating scenarios, he must make effective decisions on market processes. In addition, without organizing the production related to exercise of the elaborated alertness and judgment, entrepreneurial action is not sufficient. The seizing of opportunities does not occur in an automatic way, like in an economic model. It requires action and command. Man can even try to execute each one of these actions isolated, but his actions will be incomplete. So, entrepreneurship, my work, results from a conciliation between alertness, judgment, and production organization. Man perceives and creates market opportunities, decides to allocate resources, and elaborates a strategy to achieve his goals. And in the entrepreneurial action, is not different, even though it doesn't refer to the creation of business itself. As the team leader and responsible for facing uncertainty, the entrepreneur is also responsible for organizing the production or inside the analysis processes and creating entrepreneurial opportunities. He has the vital role of allocating resources and people to achieve the proposed objectives. And about the production organization, we must quote that for something to stop being a dream, it's necessary to coordinate multiple efforts, even if we are talking about innovation inside the companies. It's not only about the financial cost and capital ownership, but also the entrepreneurial ability, skill to organize productive and organizational arrangements that allow for its implementation. Good ideas are useless if not put into practice. Therefore, this entrepreneur as the inventor and achiever of new opportunities exercise these three attributes. One, by being alert to new opportunities, he speculates, creates, or discovers using the freedom he received from senior management. Two, he uses his derived judgment, liberated by the owner of the resources. And three, as he is responsible for the innovation, he takes control of the innovative processes, organizing the entrepreneurial team. More than that, entrepreneurship is never developed in a sole and single action, but that as a dynamic process that never runs out. The entrepreneurial process begins from the consequent reactions to the actions of the entrepreneur, repeating itself, stemming from his alertness to imagine and discover new opportunities, subsequently executing his judgment and organizing the production. In the end, entrepreneurship is not, as one can imagine, just a battle. It's a war that is a range of battles that require strategies, tactics, and distinctive operational functions to achieve a common goal. Thank you very much. You have more time. Okay, but I'm finished.
Okay, so opening the floor for questions and answers. Artur. Okay.
Great.
So I work within a firm. So if I do something, So I work within a large firm,
Okay.
and if I have an idea, I'm alert to an opportunity. I identify that opportunity, and I think that your definition of the entrepreneur is very stylized, because that person then drives the whole activity within the firm. But often, if I have an idea, I have to decide myself whether this firm I'm in is the right firm to do it with. If I have a really good idea, but the firm might not be the right organization to do it with, I then decide, do I leave the firm and become an entrepreneur in the Foss and Klein sense of it, or the Kirchner sense of it, or do I stay within the firm? But if I decide that the opportunity is one that the firm could exploit, oftentimes I don't behave like an entrepreneur internally. I take my idea to my boss and I explain it to him, and then the idea might be taken away from me and somebody else will do it. It's my alertness to the opportunity, and I've brought it to somebody else, and then the firm gears itself into action, and the firm exploits the opportunity. So if you think of the classic example of the development of the Post-it notes within 3M, the guy who developed the Post-it note, the glue that allowed you to tack it on and off, he had no further part in the process once he developed the idea. 3M itself takes over the idea and exploits it. It develops the production. It does it. And so I think that your stylized version of the entrepreneur is very interesting, I think, as a model. Yeah. But I think that the decisions the entrepreneur makes are often more complex and difficult than an entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur has to decide not only has he alert to an idea, but how is it going to be exploited? He or she has a range of options there, a range of complex decisions that an entrepreneur outside of the firm doesn't have. So I do think it throws up different types of problems, and there is a distinction between the two. But things like the culture of the firm, will the firm exploit the opportunity, are also important factors for the entrepreneur that aren't for the entrepreneur yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, there is some difference between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs risks their capital, so like they have the original judgment, and I think Foss and Klein, in Foss and Klein we can find it, this differentiation. And about the risk, it's interesting your example, because of course entrepreneurs can have his ideas stolen by companies, and but companies will be restricted to creation of new ideas. So we're talking about a company that have an tech, how I can say, and creative environment that allows people to create more and more ideas. If a company starts to steal or execute without permission and without, I don't know the word right now, without premium, to say when you give someone something for a reward, yeah, rewarding employees for their ideas. This company will start to be not have more ideas. It's something, but okay, yeah, it's a model. My paper, it's a start. No, it's define entrepreneurship. Later in the next chapters of my work, I will work on more complex examples and about organizational culture that's so relevant. Without a good organizational culture that allows people to create, it's impossible to have entrepreneurship. But of course, talking about the difference between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship is more complex. It's more complex because you are starting a business from zero, for nothing, from nothing. You don't have the environment, already created environment that supports your creation. So your risk is more, and you take more time to have like the execution of your ideas, to be rewarded by your ideas. So I don't know, it's interesting. I will talk with you more later because I really like your example. Thank you very much for your question.
We have like 2 minutes, so if you want, you can ask your question.
Yeah, as I have a short personal example. I'm an entrepreneur, and I want to give the owner perspective. It's really difficult also to keep entrepreneurs. They create a lot of value, and they have to keep them in the company to get some part of that value. And we have a web hosting company, and we had a smart guy. He invented a new business model. So we have to have him to stay in the company. We gave him a third of the company shares. And now 10 years later, he is the main owner of it, and we have all prospered due to this process. He have transferred the company into something much better and more prosperous, and all of us have been gaining of this entrepreneurship. So it's as an owner, it's always how to keep those people, and you have to pay them in some way. Yeah. That's my perspective as a business owner.
You need a culture and an environment and arrangement, but of course, in the money is the God. I don't know if I can say it, but without money, people will not stay in the company. Would not stay in the company. So you need to pay them, and rewarding with shares. It's a kind of strategy. I don't know. In Brazil, for example, one of the most famous companies started in the 90s a different kind of. In Brazil, it's not common to. It was not common to like reward of shares companies. It was always. Most of the companies were like family-based companies, family-owned companies. So this company that's beer company started rewarding with shares people, and like they started to sustain their environment and keep their most brilliant people to work there. Like it's a kind of strategy that can work, but it needs to be used in a certain way. Because sometimes rewarding with shares, we can make like a distortion about market value, and people start to try to create short-term value in the stocks prices to maximize their net worth, and not like to maximize the value addition to economic source for the stakeholders of the organization.
Okay, thank you very much, Artur, for the thought-provoking presentation.